So having established that our data is reliable, we now just need to concern ourselves with the best score across the both trials per athlete. Remember, in SPSS it's only ever one athlete per row. This is all the data of athlete 1 and here for athlete 2, etc. Before we do our analysis to check for relationships and differences and try and uncover some trends, we first have to identify whether the data we have is normally distributed. And the significance of that is that normally distributed data can be transferred and applied to other populations that we may later work with, and indeed other people could use our results to apply to their own practice as well. So normal distribution would be that in any test, not just sport, not just measures of jump height or sprint speed, you'd expect, providing the sample was large enough, most people to score average for that test. There'd be a few extreme cases where some people score really good and a few examples where some people were terrible at it. But on the whole, most people would gravitate towards the average score. And then you get what's referred to as this bell-shaped curve. If the sample, however, is not very large, then another way to get this normal distribution, this transferable data set to other populations, would be to have a homogeneous group. That is that the people that you tested are very similar. They have similar characteristics. So that would help in creating this normal distribution. So to check for that, we go into Analyze, we go into Descriptive Statistics, and then into Explore. Again, we're only looking at the best scores now, which are the scores that we would use for our measures of relationships and differences. And we could just get the whole lot and put the whole lot across, and it would tell us our output per variable. But just to make things a bit quicker here, I'm just going to look at one variable at a time. We go into plots. I'm going to uncheck that. We're going to click the histogram so that will illustrate our normal distribution, or should one exist. And we're going to importantly check this box, which is the normality plots with tests. Click continue. OK. It will run the exam. Once that's finished, we'll get our output. The first box here is the descriptive statistics for that variable, so means, standard deviations, etc. But here's our test for normality. If the group is less than 50, if our sample size is less than 50, we use the Shapiro-Wilk. If it's more than 50, then we use the Kolmogorov-Smirnov test. We want to check and make sure that the value is greater than 0.05. If it is, then we have a normal distribution, which we do here. So our data is normally distributed, which is good. When we look at the histogram, you can see that it does indeed roughly resemble a bell-shaped curve. So mainly people are average scorers with a few extreme cases. It's very unlikely with a smaller sample that you're going to get a perfect curve, but that's close enough to be statistically considered a normal distribution of data. And also of note, you get this box plot which describes the distribution of data as well. This can be very good as well, and I'll illustrate here is that often we'll make a mistake with data entry. In this example, perhaps someone's inputted an extra 0, and then if I then use that data there and run the same tests, so everything stays in its previous format, then when I look at the data now, well, first it's not normally distributed. We might think, we've not got a normal distributed data here, but if we firstly examine the box plot, and here on the way down you can see that we have a histogram that indeed is very far from normally distributed. The box plot will tell us that we have an outlier, and that's athlete number 1. It tells you which athlete it is. and that person has clearly got a score much higher than everyone else. So in this case, we know that it is an error of input, but there might be others which aren't errors, but just classify a particular athlete as an outlier and therefore do not resemble the other athletes that make up the sample, and that at times could be cause for exclusion from the data set. So let's go back and just correct that. So I'll then run that normality test for the remaining variables, but also in this data set we have two teams. Remember, if I click this label here, I've got the blue team and I've got the green team. Now I might want to actually analyze and look for trends within each team and report that back to each coach, rather than do it as a collective group. If I did want to do that, I'd need to make sure that the data is normally distributed within each team, and I would do that. Again, go analyze, descriptive statistics, and in this example where I've got team, I'll just put that in factor list. So now when I press OK, and noting that again that all my boxes I checked remain as they were, this time when I press OK, I'll get the same output but separated by a team. So my descriptors per each team and my normality scores per team. And you can again see that even separated for team with a smaller sample size, the guys were homogeneous enough for me to still find a normal distribution in data. And again, that's still okay and classed as normal distribution, as indeed is this. I've got my box plots, and this is the representation here, no outliers amongst those teams. So having established normal distribution, we can now go on and run some parametric tests.